Good evening. Let's talk politics. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. This program, very special program, brought to you by the People's Progressive Party Civic, uh, where we discuss a number of issues, political issues of the day. I am joined by two very special guests, today being Sunday, two men of the cloth. First, I'd like to introduce, and both gentlemen I've known for quite some time, for eons. So I'd first introduce Bishop Patrick Findlay, and also joining us tonight is Reverend Raymon Cummings. Gentlemen, I welcome you both to tonight's program. Let's talk politics.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for
Well,
having me.
thank you, Michael, for having me here.
All
I
right,
expect
I'd
to
like
join your
to.
program.
That's quite my pleasure and honor. I'd also like to welcome our listeners and our viewers across the length and breadth of Guyana, and also those joining us in the diaspora. Welcome to tonight's program. Let's get right into the meat of the matter. But before we deal with political issues, there is a phenomenon seemingly occurring in our society today. And I could not have two better guests to speak to this matter. And this deals with a matter of violence against women, domestic violence, men respecting women, and us, we men folk, uh, placing greater emphasis on the value of the women in our lives, the women in our societies. We've seen some incidents, unfortunate, occur recently. While I do not see that as a microcosm of the Guyanese construct in terms of our male demeanor toward women, I believe it is something at the instant of peeking its ugly head, it should be condignly dismissed and condemned. And both of you gentlemen, I know you are very passionate about this issue of the whole notion of domestic violence, not only against women generally, but more specifically, domestic violence against women.
Yeah, Mike, if I may go first, um, domestic violence is a scourge that keeps bombarding our society all the time. The things we have seen lately, um, it sicks your stomach. The way women are treated by the men folk. The truth of the matter is, we cannot live without women. It doesn't matter how hard we try. But what we're seeing today is a total disrespect, dishonor. Men treat women like property, move here, move there, pulled here, pushed there. And really, that's not what it is, and that's what it ever should be. I mean, all the holy books that I know talks about our respect for women, respect for them. And I am appalled by the recent upsurge in the way women are treated, and especially um, in the death toll we're seeing. Last night, I'm told a woman died in Dobbin Street Lodge, not last week, and well, we saw the revelation of another young woman who was murdered, and we have to be more proactive in getting this scourge under control. So I am totally in line with you. This shouldn't happen, and we have to.
I should say before you go, Raymond, that these sentiments expressed is supported, are supported, and of course they are representative of the views of every man
Yes, Michael,
in, in,
I
in the in the
myself would
people's
want
in
to
the People's
condemn.
Progressive Party.
Yes.
I would want to condemn that act, those acts of domestic violence. Of course, it's not something that is encouraged. It's not something that is allowed in the People's Progressive Party. The People's Progressive Party, being one of the oldest political movements in Guyana, started with one of the things that they started with was the fight for equality for women. the beginning of the struggle of the People's Progressive Party, they had a lot of women who were involved. And as a matter of fact, they won the right, as I tell people often, for women to vote in Guyana before in a lot of countries that are called developed countries today. So the fact that women ought to be treated equally with respect, with dignity, is a struggle that the People's Progressive Party has always been in. And more so, it's a struggle that every society needs to push for. It is unfair, it is illogical to have one half of your society fighting and killing another half, whether it's everyone involved or not. The mere fact that women are being made to suffer at the hands of men to that extent, to the extent where they're being killed, is something that we should all be appalled about. Because when these women are killed, it's not only they that suffer, or it's their family, the children, and their offsprings, and so many other people who are involved in their lives, create so much pain, anger, and all sorts of things that keeps going through generation to generation. And more, I think that society needs to give support to women who find themselves in these situations. Oftentimes, people tend to turn a blind eye, but I think we need to give more support to them and condemn the men who are involved in these actions. I often say that these men lime at different places. They lime with friends at different places. If you know that you have a friend who is given to domestic violence, my thing is just ostracize them. Let them know that it's not something that is acceptable. It's not a behavior that you would want to be involved in, and you'd want to be associated with people who are involved in. And I think that if all in society make an effort, we can bring an end to this issue of domestic violence. If not to stop it totally, but to reduce it to a great extent.
Mike, if I may, I'm glad that Raymond tickled me in the fact that the government was always careful about the way women were treated. And it was under the former president, Barra Jagdeo, that the first Men's Affairs Bureau was set up here in Guyana, and matter of fact, in the Caribbean. And so I served in capacity. One of the things that I constantly did was to meet men own backyard, their own environment, football field, seawall, fishing trip, wherever, wherever they were, to help them to deal with anger, to help them to deal with disappointments, to help them deal with unmet expectations, to help them to be better men, to be better husbands, fathers in the society. So I'm glad that he said that it was under the PPP's government that this Men's Affairs Bureau, and we covered from one end of this nation to the other, one end of this country to the other, talking to boys growing into manhood, going to the secondary schools, and talking to boys and men about the issue of respecting women in every strata, everywhere we go. And so I'm glad that I was reminded that it was a PPP government who took the initiative against all odds, Daddy, against all odds. Nobody thought that that was necessary, but it was President Obi, President who said, let's have this. And we were able to stem or to deactivate the things that was happening and do that.
While
Well, I'm
gentlemen,
glad
while
that,
while
Michael,
go ahead, Raymond. Go ahead.
I'm glad that Patrick raised the issue of dealing with it from the level of boys. Because the acts of domestic violence is not only limited to women, it also involves children. And having your boy children learn at an early age to manage their anger and to deal with disappointments and so on helps them to be able to deal with issues in the home, to be better fathers, not only be better husbands, but be better fathers to their children, and reduce the amount of anger and bitterness in our society that would allow them in turn to raise children who are better citizens and can be more productive and wouldn't be losing them to the prisons or to death and all these different things that we're seeing now. So having invested in them, they can be productive in our society.
While, gentlemen, we do not seek to politicize this issue, I believe, and we in the People's Progressive Party, all in the People's Progressive Party, believes it's imperative that the prominence given to this issue on tonight's program is at is maximized because of the seriousness of this issue. Notwithstanding the fact, for the sake of emphasis, I speak on behalf of the leadership and everyone in the People's Progressive Party. More specifically, every man in the People's Progressive Party in condemnation of acts of domestic violence, and more specifically, again, acts of domestic violence against women. It must be condemned, and we do condemn it condignly. Moving on, we're congregating, since I have two men of the cloth, I'd like to use that word. We're congregating here tonight on the heels of the observance, the 2021 observance of Labor Day. And you have heard many utterances in the public in relation to the People's Progressive Party's track record as it relates to its approach to the working class. There were many utterances also that I found to be very laughable. However, gentlemen, I want you to speak from your own experience, your own knowledge, and based on your own reading and your own insight, your own personal experience, and being a part and in close proximity to the People's Progressive Party, the manner with which the successive PPPC governments have dealt with the working class. While I do not wish to make a comparative analysis here, it is in utter contrast to the manner with which the PNC has been treated with the working class, identifying with some aspects or some sections of the working class, whilst not in a hypocritical manner, whilst not championing their cause. We're on the heels of Labor Day 2021. Gentlemen, I ask you to speak to the approach the PPP has taken over the years since its existence as it relates to identifying with the ordinary man and the working class. Raymond?
Well, I would let, if you're talking about the PPP's track record with the labor movement, we must be reminded that the People's Progressive Party was started as a result of the workers' struggle. It came out of that struggle in the sugar industry by the indentured servants and the descendants of indentured servants who were suffering at the hands of the colonial masters. That struggle was a workers' struggle. That expanded into what later became the independent movement. But throughout the history, the PPP continued with their support base being that of the workers. In terms of the incentives that was given to workers, the involvement in the labor movement, the GAWU, we know about that. What they do for workers when they were actually in power. You look at the housing sector. One of the first things they did in the 1950s was to ensure that there was adequate housing, moving the workers from living in lodges and so on to try to provide housing for them, water, electricity, things that were necessary to ensure that people not only work and produce for the society, but they in turn can benefit from it. If you look more recently, what has been happening in terms of education, well, even in the 50s, the education was important, ensuring that the children of the workers were educated, ensuring that workers were educated. The establishment of the University of Guyana that started at the Queen's College how many years ago started by the People's Progressive Party. You talk about the scholarship programs more recently, and even then, ensuring that the children of those workers were educated to bring them out of the type of manual labor that they were forced into, the education of persons in the workforce through the different institutions that have been established to allow workers to educate themselves, and more recently with the scholarships being offered to allow persons who are in the workforce to be educated even while they're working, so that they would not only be able to earn more, but to be able to create a better quality of life for themselves. So the People's Progressive Party and the working class people have always been worked hand in hand. I don't want to go into the comparisons. If you want me to, I can go into the comparisons of what has happened. And we saw recently the criticisms of the scholarship program, where and it's the first time I'm hearing a politician. I can't believe that a politician would actually criticize the granting of scholarships to the masses. A politician depends on the masses in order to get his votes. Why would a politician criticize a political party for giving scholarships to the masses? And this is not scholarships that are given to PPP members or PPP party holders only, but these are scholarships that are open for all Guyanese, wherever you are, whatever uh, strata in life you are. You can apply, you're eligible, you can apply. And if you look at the type of scholarships that are being offered, it caters for every aspect, every sphere of the workforce, like they did in the 50s. You had the establishment of the trade school, the Gaisuku Trade School, that allowed for persons who are inclined to the skill areas, the more motor skills to develop themselves. You had the University of Guyana, the Critchlow Labour College, all these different areas that allowed for the overall development of all people in society. And that is what a government, that is what a political movement that is interested in the development of society will think about. Not only about developing a few, as we saw recently over the last 5 years. You choose an elite bunch of people in society and you educate them to the max, and you make them an elite gathering, and they in turn, they have now, or they will replace the colonial masses. And that is the attitude of the People's National Congress and their cohorts, and that is what we've had. That is what led to the destruction of this country in 28 years, and more recently the vast decline over the last 5 plus 3 years.
Bishop Findlay, I'm going to bring you in on this, more specifically from the standpoint of, as Raymond rightly said, the provision of betterment for the masses, essentially, whether it be scholarships or remuneration packages or a tax regime, opposed to the very oppressive tax regime we saw just recently under the PPP under the PNC administration led by Mr. David Granger. Amazingly, Mr. Granger was on one of his his coalition programs today, and he pointed to a PPP. I am not sure. I believe the former president prides himself in being somewhat of a historian. I cannot recall the section of history to which he referred when he spoke to the PPP's, the People's Progressive Party's historic opposition to the working class. I felt it was somewhat delusional and dishonest altogether.
Yes, I think it was. It was honest. Look at the PPP's track record. Given the fact that the opposition, the now opposition, was in power there for 5 years, And the amount of taxes they dumped on the Guyanese populace. As soon as the PPP got back into power in August, their first budget, which was an impromptu budget, if I may say that, their first budget immediately removed VAT on over 200 items. Immediately they removed the VAT, giving more power to the workers so that ultimately more money will be in their pockets. And they've been continuing to do that. This year's budget again saw that they've removed taxes from construction, from a lot of other items. So, in an effort to give more value to the laborers, to the workers, money as it was, and that is indicative of the heart of the PPP as far as we see labor is concerned. We believe in the PPP that a man works and he must enjoy the money that he works for. And so, in an effort to make this happen, there have been a removal of a number of VAT on items so as to allow the people to enjoy that. I also want to say that, like Raymond said, not to repeat what he said, but I believe the PPP government was formed and founded on labor, on the respect for labor, on the respect for people, what what they work for, the energy they exert into making things happen, and this is what they've been always doing. If you check the records, we've always been doing that, and again, we've seen all of these new things that's coming up, and like Raymond said, have a politician talking about what scholarship. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that when you're trying to enhance the lives of the people in the country? What is wrong with that? And that is where we have a big difference in the way the people think on the two factions of the politics in this nation. And so I, for one, has seen the PPP do everything in their power to make sure that the people, the laborers, the workers in our nation benefit from all the things that they enjoy. The removal of VAT, everything that is happening. And so I don't know what I don't know what they're talking about. We're trying, and every day it's getting better every day with the new housing projects that are being implemented. With everything that's happening, it creates more job opportunities. The scholarship prepares people to get involved in the workforce. The BIT, the Board of Industrial Training, they again are trying to get people around this nation to come aboard and do a program where they can be certified, and that certificate is valid wherever you go. What else? It's all about labor. It's all about getting people to work so that they can be able to earn and live comfortably here in the nation. And kudos to PPP.
As simple as it may seem, gentlemen, one would, and this is my little comparative analysis, on the assumption of office, Mr. Granger converted a labor ministry to a mere department. And I believe it is significant that His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali restored a Ministry of Labor to substantively deal with issues relating to labor, occupational safety and health, industrial relations. I believe it's significant, and it's an indication of the seriousness, the importance the People's Progressive Party attach to the whole notion of work, the importance the PPP attaches to the working class. And I believe Minister Joseph Hamilton has been doing a more than commendable job in the Ministry of Labor. There have been many holes to fill, following in the footsteps of an seemingly useless APNU AFC administration. And he has been doing that job commendably, and I believe that ministry is going to grow from strength to strength as the whole issue surrounding capacity building within the public sector continues. Of course, there was cosmetic attempts to bolster and improve the service given within the public service. There was the Collins Public Service Institution, which served no purpose, never in any strategic way sought to or actually improve the quality of service within the public service. And fortuitously, in relief to the taxpayers, that is no longer existing under the PPPC administration. A substantive ministry is dealing with those and other matters, and there will be, and there has been, and there will continue to be significant input as it relates to human resource development within the labor sector, within the national workforce. Gentlemen, I want us to also address this issue of the re-establishment of the labor ministry as an indication of this government's seriousness about the working class.
I want to go first, Mike. I want to go. I'll tell you why. Incidentally, I was the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Labor in 2015. I worked with Honorable Minister Gopal, and we had implemented and set up structures and things in place. And basically, the Ministry of Labor was gaining momentum. We were spreading our wings. We were running. We were on the runway for a takeoff. We were going great guns. I mean, we had so many things implemented, so many things set in place. And boom, lo and behold, when APNU AFC came into power, they squashed that whole thing, threw it back into where it was, and did nothing for the 5 years.
And Keith Scott arrived.
Exactly. And did nothing. And then the PPP government, understanding the role of labor, understanding the quest, where they want to go, having the vision, and I like to say this all the time when I talk about the PPP government, the vision, knowing where we're headed, knowing fully well that we're getting better and better and better. Oil and gas and all the things are coming back in place. What is going to be absolutely necessary is the labor force. And so they have put that thing back where it rightfully belongs. And like you rightly said, Minister Hamilton is doing a fabulous job. The PS there, Mr. Cupin is doing a fabulous job. The people are back in the groove. They're excited about the work that is happening. And I believe, like you said, the Ministry of Labor is going great guns, and they have far more to go because they understand the vision and they understand what it takes to make nations grow. And that's all I'll say at this time.
Raymond?
Well, Michael, we must remember that the labor movement in this part of the world started in Guyana. That's one of the first things that we must always bear in mind when we talk about labor and the labor movement in Guyana. That it was in Guyana that the labor movement started in the entire Caribbean with Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow and others. But it's if we are to look at the PPP's commitment to the labor movement and how serious they are, when they realized, when the PPP was in government prior to 2015, and they recognized that there was an influx of business people from China who were establishing businesses in Guyana, and people from the different countries who speak a different language to us. They were not satisfied in just educating them about our labor laws and our labor practices, but they went to the extent of having our labor laws translated to their language so that they will not only be educated in it, but they'll be able to read and understand it in their language. and therefore they'll be able to better appreciate what we're getting at. In terms of managing what takes place in the labor sector, they moved the labor ministry from just the Ministry of Labor, where you look at workers' pay and compensation and leave and so on, and they took it to the place of where they not only talk about labor but occupational health and safety, which are also important aspects in the labor movement. When more emphasis is now placed not only on what a person is being paid, how much leave they get, that they're properly compensated and so on, but that the safety standards that are expected in whatever industry they're working. Also, and this was before oil and gas, recognizing that we were in a society that was with an expanding economy and that there were sectors yet to be developed. They move ahead and began to set up the infrastructure to deal with things that are now coming on stream. So their commitment to the labor movement and the struggles of the early 1900s remain firm. And it is being seen in the ways that they deliver, in the things that they do, the ways that the work is done and managed, and the policies and the laws implemented by the PPP government.
Gentlemen, I want to reference an excerpt from the People's Progressive Party's Labor Day message, and I want you to comment on this specific part of the message. And it reads, and I quote, "The PPP firmly believes that mechanisms to engage and represent our workers must not be diluted, and they must be able to access related services in a structured and holistic manner as is necessary through a ministry." This ties into what we have been saying. And I further quote, "While our party is aware that there is more to be done, it continues to advance a multifaceted approach to ensure the advancement of our workers. Very early within the current tenure of government, burdensome taxes, I believe one of you gentlemen referenced this, burdensome taxes and fees were removed and the education cash grant was restored. To date, thousands of jobs have been created and restored to allow our workers a dignified opportunity to provide for their families." And this also, to my mind, brings to this discussion the the wholesale and wanton firing of sugar workers, the restoration of employment along the sugar belt, which lent to the improvement of village economies, which also lent to the reemergence of many cottage industries and also the emergence of industries dependent on the sugar industry, especially along the sugar belt. This is a very powerful extract from the PPP's Labor Day message.
Yes, Michael, it is important. And the PPP, as I said earlier, always recognize the importance of the labor movement. But they also recognize that there's always more to be done. And there will always be more to be done because the more a society develops, the more needs people recognize could be met, and the more they demand. So the issue of workers' rights and workers' compensation and the struggle for more for workers is an ongoing struggle. It's not a struggle that will ever come to an end because there will always be more that could be done for workers to improve them. Of course, the whole idea of educating your workers is important, and it has always been emphasized by the PPP, as we keep saying, because with an educated workforce, you increase productivity, you increase production, and in that way, you're able to produce at a higher quality, at a higher standard, and therefore the workers themselves can benefit more from your industry. It's quite the opposite to what we saw over the last 5 years and what we saw under the People's National Congress. Remember, look at what's happening with the trades union movement. You have someone who heads a trade union movement, not the largest trades union in the country, but he heads a trade union movement, and he keeps using whatever tactics, some of the same tactics that we saw attempted a few months ago, to keep himself at the head of that trades union movement. What is going on there? What is going on there? And because of that, you have a stagnation in the vision and the movement forward. There's no growth. And as a result of that, the workers in Guyana, and I dare say in Guyana, are being held hostage. And I hope that someday they will realize that they need to have a more visionary leader, that they need to have people in the leadership of their unions that have the interests of workers at heart and not their own personal interests. Look what happened with the teachers union. You know, there's always this tendency. They get involved with the union, they're more interested in a partisan stand. So when the PNC is in power, there are no strikes, so the workers suffer. When the PPP come into power, there are strikes for just about anything, things that they sat down for years and allowed to deteriorate. I'm not saying that it's not their right, but when you have labor leaders that tend to put partisan politics in front of everything, the workers suffer. Not only that, they don't respond to some of the offers by the government. And you ask the question, how involved is the labor leaders, the labor movement, in ensuring that workers benefit from these scholarship packages? How involved are they in ensuring that for this pandemic that we have going now? I'm not hearing words from the unions encouraging their workers to get vaccinated. This is a serious labor issue. Think about it. We have workers working in environments that are exposed to a number of people. Where is the labor movement calling on the government or encouraging the workers to ensure that they're vaccinated? Where are they calling on employers at this time to say, look, go ensure that your employees are vaccinated? They're not interested in that. They're not interested in that. That is what a labor movement should be doing at this time in a pandemic. Why aren't we seeing that? The government has made the facilities available. Are they encouraging their representatives? Are they not interested in these people? You know, we need to have a more visionary leadership in the labor movement. And I hope, and it's sad that you have a government now that is more interested in the workers than the labor movement and their representatives. And I leave you there, Michael.
Bishop Findlay, your take on this. And I want you to specifically speak to this issue from the standpoint of a comment made earlier by former President Granger in singling out the Guyana Public Service Union and the GTUC as unions who the PPP has been unfriendly toward. Notwithstanding the fact, and I'm going to use my own personal experience, I could recall as a young reporter covering PNC reform at that time, or rally at the Square of the Revolution, and Mr. Hoyt was contesting the presidency. And at the end of the rally, there was so much fanfare when the head of the Guyana Public Service Union, then still is Mr. Patrick Yard, mounted that political platform and embraced Mr. Hoyt, essentially endorsing you, Desmond Hoyt, as his choice and the union's choice for president. The partiality of the GPUs, the GPSU, and the GTUC has never been called into question. However, Mr. Granger feels, whilst in some little cocoon of his own, feels that GAU is too closely aligned to the PPP. I don't get it. Where is the transparency and the honesty in all of this?
Michael, if I can cut in, I know I'll take some of your time, Patrick, but we have a serious issue in our society, and it's something that we need to call out. Anything that the PvP does, there is a section of this society that sees it as evil. But when they're doing it, it's not evil, and that is basically what is happening there. So GAU is bad because they seem to be closely aligned with the PvP. But the PSU is good. The GTUC is good because they are aligned to the PNC. It's a weird way of thinking. I do not criticize anyone for their political views, their political support. Let them support who they want to support. But even if you're supporting a political party of your choice, then the workers should not suffer. Look what happens when the PPP is in power. That does not stop GAU from representing their workers. That don't stop them from saying, look, this is what the workers need. But what happens when the PNC is empowered? The GTUC stops striking. The PUC don't hear them negotiating for anything. And that is the problem that you have.
Yes,
Bishop?
yes, yes, and you're absolutely correct. And I think Michael said it. Raymond said it nicely. As long as you are working, when they're in power, you know, you can do nothing wrong. When this one is in power, you can do nothing right, and that's the problem. GPSU and all the others. Like you said, there were no strikes. I mean, you can get off with anything, but soon as the PPP comes into power, it's a problem, and it should not. And when we're heading for unity, His Excellency talked about the Corridor of Hope, and the Excellency talked about getting everybody united as one, working for one Guyana. You know, these are some of the things that the unions are doing, and I heard the address or the interview with Mr. Granger, and all he kept talking about is the union and this 100 years celebration is coming up in June. And he keeps talking about the GPSU and the TUC, the PSU, and all of that. He doesn't talk about any other union at all. And I want to concur with Raymond. If you're representing a people, then you must represent the people, regardless of of your choice or of whatever. You cannot be biased as to one thing. You've got to be able to represent them, and I think that's where we have the problem. We don't have visionaries. All they're doing their own stuff. They're looking at how they can be enhanced, how they can gain from this whole enterprise, and they don't care anything about the workers at all. And what we're seeing happening now, what we're seeing changing bit by bit, is the people are seeing that, listen, the people who are supporting the unions, they're not making any sense, and so you're finding people are backing out of this whole deal with them and making things happen. So as you look at all of the unions and the work they do, you have constant conflicts with the government. Anything that the government does, it's bad. Anything that they attempt to do. And Raymond raised a good point. I didn't think about that. Where's the union encouraging the people to do the vaccine? This is a labor matter. You want to make sure that they're vaccinated and they're in good environment and everything. Where are they? Where are they encouraging people to grab a hold of the scholarships that are being offered by this government now? Where are they? You're not hearing anything about those things, and a lot of people are not getting vaccinated, because of what they're being told by the other side, and it's very sad. It's very sad when you look at the pandemic, when you look at the effects of this thing globally. you know why can't we at least put aside hide our own feelings, our own politics, and make this happen for the Guyanese populace. These are people, who are suffering, and over 300. We have 298, as far as I know. Maybe they're over 300 now, and we don't celebrate the numbers. But what I'm saying, it's a reality. COVID is here, guys. So we need to make sure that we do everything. And this is where I really expected the unions to really encourage their members to go ahead and get vaccinated. You know, so I hope they change this whole mindset and understand that the government of the day is working tediously, feverishly for everyone, making everyone an equal partner in this whole deal.
It goes beyond. It goes beyond the unions encouraging the workers to get tested or to get vaccinated. To my mind, there has been also a a blinding absence of encouragement from the political opposition for persons to go do so. The hypocrisy in this, however, is that, as revealed by Dr. Leslie Ramsamy just over a week ago, most of the leaders of the political opposition have been vaccinated. It's as if you quietly snuck into rooms, get vaccinated, and came out and told and refused to tell your supporters uh, to go do the same. I cannot fathom the level of uncaringness on the part of the leadership of the PNC as it relates to many things surrounding their supporters. And I cringe at the thought of the loyalty of some supporters of the PNC in the glaring presence of an uncaring leadership. And also, Bishop, you mentioned Mr. Granger's reference to the 100-year observances of unionism in Guyana. And to my mind, it's a representation of Mr. Granger's presidency. Mr. Granger, as far as I'm concerned, was very ceremonial as a president. You looked good at functions and you sounded good, but you did nothing for the people. And I challenge anyone to that. I am also going to go out on a limb and say, gentlemen, that one of the best presidents this country has ever had was David Arthur Granger. No other president marched better than he did at flag raising ceremonies. And that is his takeaway as president of this country. Raymond?
Yeah, I think, Michael, that he never understood the difference between a ceremonial president and an executive president. He never got a grasp of what being an executive president was about. And even now, as leader of the PNC, his leadership is poor, and no wonder persons from within the party are calling for him to go. And it's a high level of dishonesty. We know that members in the leadership of the PNC have been getting vaccinated, went at the time that the vaccines came and took their shots. Their families took their shots. But where they calling on the rest of society to go out there? Imagine the impact that it would have if you have the leaders of all political parties out there making statements. I think I heard a statement from Moses once, but you just sit down and think about it. If you have all the political leaders out there encouraging Guyanese to go and take your shot, you have the trades union movement. Instead, what people are calling for, a lockdown. We know that the lockdown is not working. People are finding ways to get out. Human beings are social creatures and they will find ways. People are innovative. The police, the soldiers, the people who are policing the lockdown, they have relatives, they have friends, and they will find ways of getting out. Why don't we take time to ensure that we do what is right And the safest thing to do is for us to be vaccinated. Spend some of the time that you're calling for a lockdown in society that will cause more harm and injury to workers, in that workers will be laid off and people will not get paid, the economy will suffer. Spend some of that time encouraging persons to go out there and get vaccinated. Once we get a level of a level of persons vaccinated, then we will get to herd immunity and we'll see our numbers falling. You look at Barbados. Barbados didn't have no reported cases for 2 days in a row. Why are we still like this? What are you going to do? Lock up everybody? You can't. The thing that you need to do is to do what is wise. Encourage, let the leaders take their leadership positions seriously and encourage those who follow them, those who believe in them, to do the right thing, to do what they have done, because many of them have done it, if not all of them have done it. Encourage them to do what they have done and go and take their shots and protect themselves and protect their families and protect their loved ones.
Bishop?
Yeah, we've been harping on that tune all the time. They're dishonest with their followers. It is unfair. It is hypocritical. It is inhuman for you to prepare yourself against the dangers out there, the things that are uh, hinder your affect your families. It is bad. It is wrong. It is inhuman for you to get the protection that is available, not encourage your followers, your constituencies to do that. And the other thing I want to add is look at what the PPP did coming in this less than 9 months, the other morning, less than 9 months. I mean, you have the other Caribbean countries. This government got in there in August and began to rapidly try to secure the vaccines for this nation. They went all over, they shopped, they tried to get more, they couldn't get it. But they've invested. They've invested in the well being of this nation. They've gotten all these vaccines. I now it's like 125,000, if I'm correct, that has really taken the first shot of the vaccine. I don't know how people could still point fingers and call this government all the names that they're calling them when it is evident that they're trying their utmost to make sure that everybody gets vaccine to reach that herd immunity, so that this whole pandemic is not going to send people to the ICU or send them to their grave. Look at all the investments they're making. Look at all the efforts they're putting in place to make sure that every Tom, Dick, and Harry, I will say, gets the vaccine in an effort to preserve life. It makes no sense to have a thriving nation. It makes no sense to have all of this prosperity promised and all the things that we're seeing in the future with all the money and the oil and everything. It makes no sense if you don't have a nation to enjoy that, and that's what the PPP government is doing, trying to get people
But
prepared.
Michael, if I'm to cut in,
Before you go, Raymond, Bishop Findlay spoke to the immediate actions of the PPPC administration to secure vaccines. And I believe the bishop got a little bit ahead of himself. In fact, the first thing we had to do is to find a way to get people tested. Testing before then, nothing happened without the personal touch of Wally Lawrence.
well,
So we
that's the point I was getting at, Michael. If you remember, the first
Yes.
case of COVID broke in Guyana shortly after the March 2 elections.
Raymond, I'll have to keep it to 30 seconds. We are almost out of time.
All right, good. But the PPP in opposition was the first people in Guyana that championed the wearing of face masks in opposition. But not only championed the wearing of face masks, but went on a vast drive to produce hundreds of thousands of face masks, educate persons, and got them to start using it. And this is what we done when we were in opposition, and that is what a care in opposition do. Let the PNC in opposition now match that. And that's my 30 seconds, Michael.
Gentlemen, our time is gone. In essence, we've discussed many issues tonight. Your closing sentiments, your parting thoughts. Bishop Findlay?
I really want to encourage my Guyanese brothers and sisters. If you haven't taken the vaccine yet, please take the vaccine. It's good for you. It will protect you and your family. There are over 100 fixed sites where this vaccine is administered, and there are also sites that are popping up here and there to reach to where the people are to get the vaccine. There is no excuse for not to get the vaccine because it's not going to be available all the time. So please, my brothers and sisters, let's go out there and get the vaccine whilst it's available.
Raymon?
Thank you, Michael. And in closing, I want to get back to where we started and encourage persons, especially young people, to educate your children. Make sure that you use those scholarships that are available. Ensure that you educate your children so that they can live a sociable life and we wouldn't be suffering from the level of domestic violence due to ignorance and inability to manage their anger. And also, at this time of this pandemic, we'll be able to read and understand for ourselves the science behind the pandemic and the science behind the vaccines. And we will not follow leaders who are willing to protect themselves and not protect us when we are following them. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, both of you gentlemen. I'm truly sorry that we really ran out of time. There are so many more topics I hoped that we could have covered tonight, including that most recent insult to the base, the support base of the People's Progressive Party, and even more embarrassingly, the assorted statement by the same individual, a member of parliament, a sordid attempt to explain what you said. There is no turning back. It was an ugly comment, and your sordid attempt to explain it was even uglier. It is on that note I thank Bishop Patrick Findlay and Reverend Raymon Cummings. Both of you gentlemen, thanks for being a part of this program. I am truly looking forward to having you again. I'd like to thank those of you who watch this program across the length and breadth of Guyana, and those who joined us from the diaspora, those of us who listen to this program on Freedom Radio. I thank you all for being a part of it. This has been Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. I'll join you again on Wednesday night, but before then, my colleague, Edward Lane, will be with you on Tuesday. Do have a good night.